Hello, my name is Neil Potter, and I have been a coach and a consultant to software organizations for over 30 years, and I coached Agile teams since the year 2000 when Agile became popular. This video series is about going beyond the basics of Agile software development. In this video, I will discuss 5 key improvements that an Agile team can implement to get more out of Agile. Please click below to subscribe for future videos. So the first item is to clean up the product backlog and make sure it only has requirements and that any to-dos or tasks go onto the sprint backlog. So the first diagram shows you a minimal Agile product backlog. This should have user stories on it. Typically they're one-line sentences that describe the needs of an end user, and they are organized in priority in the backlog. And on the last column there, I have a details box. If you want to add more details, which I recommend, you then either put them in the details box or you link to where the details are defined. Now, what often happens is Agile teams start to worry about where they're going to put their to-do list of their project, the tasks they're going to do day by day. And bit by bit, their backlog becomes a to-do list. So the second diagram is what I will call a mumbo-jumbo backlog, where the backlog has become the to-do list of the team and there are no longer any requirements in that list. And then they start to format the to-do list as a user story to make it look more like they had a backlog. This is not a good situation. So what we need to do is make sure the backlog is the product backlog and that has requirements, like the first example, and that any to-do list of the team is put below that in the tool or in the spreadsheet on a sprint backlog. So most tools allow you to put a subtask or a task list below every user story. That's where the to-do list should go. So keeping a clear picture of the user stories and the endpoint of the product versus the to-do list of the team. And secondly, there's really no benefit or value I see in formatting a to-do as a user story. That would almost be pretending we had a requirement in the backlog, which we kind of don't. So I would just say the to-do list should be a to-do list, tasks assigned by the team to do their work to achieve the backlog, but the user story should be in the user story format in the product backlog. Number 2 is to add effort and story point estimates so you know what can be implemented by the sprint. So one of the magic items of Agile is to get feedback on the product every 2 or 4 weeks, given your iteration or sprint length. But if you don't have good estimates for the work to be done, it is very difficult to know if you can achieve that work by the end of the sprint. With no estimates, then often people are scrambling around trying to get anything finished by the end of the sprint. And if they cannot, they roll the work to the next sprint, and therefore they avoid the feedback loop. So I think estimation is critical as a step you do in a team to verify that you can actually finish work by the end of the sprint and get a demo and the feedback. So estimation is really for the team to understand how to manage its work and know what amount of work you can do in every sprint. The first picture shows you a regular user story backlog or product backlog and a relative estimate of size on the far right hand picture in terms of points, where 40 would be a large, complicated user story, and 1 or 2 at a lower end, or 8, would be a simpler, easier user story. It's a relative range of a scale to kind of show you what is difficult and what is easy so you can better prioritize and figure out the schedule for that work. So the bottom diagram is what is called a sprint backlog. We have a user story picked out in the backlog. We show the story points estimate, the task breakdown, and then a more clear breakdown of the labor or effort required to do that. And then we have a clearer picture of what it takes to finish the user story, and therefore whether we have time at the end to demonstrate it. So we want to make sure we pick the right amount of work where the effort leads to maybe a 1 or 2 days before the end of the sprint, and we know we can finish that work and get a demo. So number 3, we define the work done for the team and make sure there's time at the end for the retrospective and the demo. So the task breakdown is shown in the sprint backlog. We should then refine that over time with our definition of done. So my example of done is analysis is done, design is done, coding, refactoring, documentation, peer reviews, testing, rework, version control, demo, and retrospective. And that really kind of defines the word done for an iteration. So the fourth improvement is to make sure we collect and use retrospective data. And that we don't assume that great things will reoccur or that problems will go away by themselves. So we really have time in the sprint to collect the data and act upon it. I do find a lot of teams don't do this particularly well. Sometimes they don't do it at all. And they end up repeating the same mistakes or getting worse mistakes and worse problems in their projects over time. And then their agile implementation becomes very sloppy and messy, and they're not really happy with it. So we really have a chance here to collect the data, prioritize, look at it thoroughly, and take action. Partly to take positive things and repeat them. So maybe we build up our done definition with the positive things too, so we have a chance to repeat them over time and maintain those gains. And secondly, look at the problems. Don't assume we're going to have to put up with them or get used to them. That there are ways to fix these things and address them, add them back into our done definition for the iteration. A lot of teams don't improve because they are scared to fail. They're scared to be embarrassed, or they think they will be embarrassed if their improvement or suggestion fails. I think one of the magic parts of Agile is that you can improve and try things on a 2 to 4 week scale. And if it works great, you learn from that. If it doesn't work so good, then you learn from that too, and you can do it again. So you are not stuck with an improvement or a new practice for more than 2 to 4 weeks. So I would recommend that you try things radically or high risk and really improve something, knowing full well that after 2 to 4 weeks, you can do it again if you have to. But you'll never know until you kind of try. And number 5, a lot of customers and management may have asked you to be agile, not really understanding fully what that kind of meant or how they could get benefit themselves. So I think the team needs to go out of their way to explain to management and customers what it means to the customer and manager, how they can benefit from this. So from a customer perspective, explain that you are going to be agile, not to kind of keep them on the hook about when you will deliver, but you want their feedback. And you want their feedback early on before you make a major mistake and you're kind of stuck with it or you have a hard time repairing it. To a manager, to be able to predict. They would like you to predict. They may have never said that, but they really like prediction, know when you're going to be finished. And really you have the velocity data and the feedback loops of every iteration to kind of narrow the range. You may have given them a range of schedule or a range of deadlines at the beginning or a range of scope, and you can use the feedback of Agile to narrow that range. So if you explain clearly to them, they will better see how they can use Agile with you for their own benefit. So in conclusion, these 5 practices are essential in any Agile implementation. Without them, chaos is very easy. I hope I have been able to give you a few ideas on what to add to your Agile implementation. Look at your project and check that you're doing these things well. For more help on these topics or your Agile implementation, please see the links below.